want to use. Okay, switch camera.
I think we're on.
No, you're on this one for sure. Now you're on that one. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all for your kind patience. So now we'll start with our sutta finally. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhuttam dhammam sangham namasami. So we take refuge in the Buddha, even when the technology is confusing. This sutta is a very beautiful sutta. It's a Dīghanakha sutta, and it's called, it's described as the Buddha giving a teaching to an extreme skeptic. So he had a very skeptical view of things. And the Buddha very graciously addressed his skepticism and helped him onto the path.
Oh, sorry.
And this is in the Majjhima Nikaya, number 74, and I'm going to post it. Dīghanakha has which version? Bhikkhu Bodhi's
notes.
Bhikkhu Bodhi's. Do you have his?
I just wanted to further place Dīghanakha.
Yeah.
He was Venerable Sariputta's nephew, and at the time that he approached the Buddha, Sariputta had been a bhikkhu for only 2 weeks, so he was still just a stream enterer.
Only. This is quite an accomplishment. So now I'm gonna share the sutta with you, and this is Bhante Sujato's translation. I'm going to take away the side notes because that will, no, that's not right. There, side notes. Okay. So, there, that's better. Okay. So, as Dīghanakha was saying that this is Sariputta's nephew.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a maternal nephew. And he was a wanderer. Dīghanakha was a wanderer. And a lot of the wanderers would engage in debates, and they had a very strong view, possibly. Or they were seekers. There are two types, or at least 2 types. Some were just, they would go and visit different groups of ascetics, they were spiritual seekers, so they went to different monasteries or gatherings where there were these ascetics that would often debate with one another. So he was more of the debating type and with a very strong view. So I'll start reading. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Rajagaha on the Vulture's Peak mountain in the Boar's Cave. This is where the Lord Buddha actually attained his awakening, it said. Then the wanderer Dīghanakha went up to the Buddha and exchanged greetings with him. When the greetings and polite conversations were over, he stood to one side and said to the Buddha, "Mr. Gautama, this is my doctrine and view." So he's pretty bold just to proclaim his view. Sometimes they do this in order to see if the leader of a group will agree or argue with them. "Nothing is acceptable to me," And here's this word, nakamati. It's not acceptable or not suitable. So that's kind of an interesting view. Nothing is accepting to me. And then the Lord Buddha answers,
Do you want to go further into that view, or are you going to
well,
during the sutta?
we have to wait to
Okay,
get
that's
into
what I
it.
thought, because it puts the note here, but it feels
And then
it's better.
Bhante Bodhi translates this, nothing is acceptable to me as,
Nothing is acceptable to me.
and Ajahn Nisaro translates it as nothing is pleasing to me, which is interesting. And you'll see later when we get a little further down that that's actually a possibility.
Yeah.
So this view of yours, Ajivasena, is that acceptable to you? So this is the clan name of Dīghanakha, Agiwa Wesena, Sana. Is that acceptable to you? If I were to accept this view, Mr. Gautama, it would make no difference. It would make no difference. So this is pretty, what does that actually mean? It would make no difference. It would be, and also Ajahn Tindasaro has translated as, it would be the same, it would be the same. And Bhante Bodhi says,
it too would be the same.
it too would be the same.
Yeah,
So
he's kind of wiggling around because the Buddha's caught him in a contradiction already.
yeah, so he's saying it doesn't matter, I'm still everything is still disagreeable to me, even if I accepted that view. So that it is kind of slippery. Well, Aji Vesana, there are many more in the world who say it would make no difference. It would make no difference. But they don't give up that view and they grasp another view. And there are a scant few in the world who say it would make no difference. It would make no difference. And they give up that view by not grasping another view. So this is about attachments to views. Some grasp at one view and then another view very tightly. When they're caught in a contradiction or someone who proves them wrong, but they still have to grasp at some view. This is how I'm understanding this. And then there are few in the world that say that would make no difference, it would make no difference. And they give up that view by not grasping another view. But there's a point where I've seen discussions that we have to have some kind of viewpoint in order to function in society, to function in the world. We have to have some understanding of things. But grasping at views is a type of grasping. It's one of the defilements. It's one of the underlying tendencies. There are some ascetics and Brahmins who have this doctrine in view. Everything is acceptable to me. So here's this word again, kamati. And it endures, tolerates, bears, withstands, seems good, acceptable, suitable, and pleasing. And this is where I think Ajahn Thanissaro got the translation, not pleasing, nothing is pleasing. And there are some ascetics and Brahmins who have this doctrine in view, nothing is acceptable to me. And there's the nakamati. And there are some ascetics and Brahmins who have this doctrine in view, Some things are acceptable to me and some things are not. So did you have something to say about this? You had a comment you wanted, or is it a footnote?
What the footnote is about this particular phrase of nothing is acceptable to me. The commentaries say that this is saying that no mode of rebirth is acceptable to me. However, Bhikkhu Bodhi says there's really no concrete evidence for that. So he interprets it as being that Dīghanakha's statement, nothing is acceptable to me, is intended to apply specifically to the teachings that he's heard around India at the time. And so those views, he's saying, none of them are acceptable. So Bhikkhu Bodhi classifies him as a radical skeptic, one who's skeptical of everything. And when we look at that class of views in, I think it's in Majjhima 76, he's called an eel wriggler, and is basically repudiating all philosophical views. Like, I won't hold any view at all, nah.
Yeah, thank you for that. So yeah, so like I was saying, you have to have some kind of standpoint or view in order to function in the world. Even like the view of karma, or there's a consequences to our actions or not. Things like that. There's like many different kinds of views that people hold, and not having any kind of view at all.
Is that what Ajahn Punadama was saying the other day about that the only view that's really, really super dangerous is this one where you refuse to have any views because
That's coming up.
oh,
Yes.
okay.
That is coming
I'll
up.
save the punchline then for
you
for later.
That is coming up, but thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, so this is an attachment to some kind of view where the few in the world are able to reconsider, not just grasp onto views tightly. There are some things that are acceptable to me and some things that are not. That's the third kind of view. Regarding this view of the ascetics and Brahmins to whom everything is acceptable is close to greed, bondage, approving, attachment, and grasping. So this view may be that actually that it's a kind of hedonistic view in a way. But they're also, they're agreeable to everybody. And so this is, he's saying that this is a type of greed. And the view of ascetics and Brahmins to whom nothing is acceptable is far from greed. Well, this is a different translation. It's not far from, because I was looking at this. There's Santike, which is close to, and then they're negating all of these things. Could you read the way Ajahn Ajahn Bhante Bodhi translates that?
He's close to lust, close to bondage, close to delighting, close to holding, close to clinging. That part?
No, the second part.
Okay, the view of these recluses and Brahmins who hold the doctrine in view, nothing is acceptable to me, is close to non-lust, close to non-bondage, close to non-delighting, and close to non-holding, close to non-clinging.
So that's a little bit different than far from approving, but so it's the negation of all those is close to non-greed, non-bondage, non-approving, non-attachment, non-grasping. And when this was said, when he said this, the wanderer Dīghanakha said to the Buddha, Mr. Gautama commends my conviction. He recommends my,
Commends.
I said that,
Oh.
commends my conviction. He recommends my conviction. So this, his view is Ditti Gatang. And this is, the first translation of this is wrong or false belief, misconception, and then, but I think he's saying theory or dogma or doctrine. That the Buddha approves of, and he's excited. So you notice that he actually does delight in this view. And what is there some different? There's some difference there with how.
Commends my point of view, recommends my point of view.
So it's interesting. The ditthi here, the ditthi gatang is gone, kind of gone to views. And but it also means he was probably meaning theory or doctrine or theory or but actually there also is the meaning of misconception or false belief here, which is kind of interesting. So but the Buddha doesn't respond when that's a kind of interesting. Dīghanakha is excited that someone agrees with him, which would mean that he does cling to his view. And then now the Buddha just carries on. Now, regarding the ascetics and Brahmins to whom some things are acceptable and some things are not, their view of what is acceptable is close to greed, bondage, approving, attachment, and grasping. Their view of what is acceptable is far from greed, bondage, approving, attachment, and grasping. When it comes to the view of the ascetics and Brahmins to whom everything is acceptable, a sensible person reflects like this. I have the view that everything is acceptable. Suppose I were to obstinately stick to this view and insist this is the only truth, everything else is false. I think this is what you were starting to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
How does Bhante Bodhi translate that?
Everything is acceptable to me, considers thus, if I obstinately adhere to my view, everything is acceptable to me, and declare only this is true, anything else is wrong, then I may clash with the two others.
So then I'd argue with two people, an ascetic or Brahmin to whom nothing is acceptable, and an ascetic or Brahmin to whom some things are acceptable and some things are not. And when there's arguing, there's quarreling. When there's quarreling, there's distress. And when there's when there's anguish, there's harm. So, considering in themselves the potential for arguing, quarreling, distress, and harm, they give up that view by not grasping another view. So they're not attached to a view. And then there's that word again, I think, or it just says ditthi. That's how those views are given up and let go. So there's a discussion about what that actually means, all those different three types of views of everything's acceptable, nothing's acceptable, and some things are and some things aren't. You think that the last one, some things are acceptable or some things aren't acceptable would be a good view to have. But I think the point here is obstinately clinging to a view, and that my view is right and everyone else is wrong, is the problem. So letting go of that attachment to a view. And then he goes through all the other two types with the same conclusion. If they the nothing is acceptable, a sensible person reflects like this. When it comes to the ascetics and Brahmins to whom nothing is acceptable, a sensible person reflects like this. I have the view that nothing is acceptable. Suppose I were to obstinately stick to this view and insist this is the only truth, anything else is futile, then I'd argue with two people, and those ascetics and Brahmins, everything is acceptable, and those that some things are acceptable and some things are not. And when there's arguing, there's quarreling, and when there's quarreling, there's distress, and when there's anguish, there's harm. So considering in themselves the potential for arguing, quarreling, distress, and harm, they give up that view by not grasping another. And that's how those views are given up and let go. And when it comes to the view, and it just continues with that some things are acceptable and some things are not, then they reflect, I have that view, and suppose I were to obstinately stick to that view and insist this is the only truth, everything else is futile, then I'd argue with two people, the other two kinds. I'm just kind of going through this quickly because we started late, and I want to get to through the sutta, which is very powerful. But you get the idea. So they're arguing with one another obstinately, and that's grasping to a view. And then they're arguing, quarreling, and causing distress. And when there's anguish, there's harm. So a sensible person does not want to get into useless arguments and harming one another with, people get so stuck on their views, and we see this in this country, where there's harm. And so can we be open-minded and not just obstinately stick to our view? But then there's the development of samadhi.
Right. And this is the point where the commentary says in the sutta that Dīghanakha discards his view. So he's heard the Buddha and sees the wisdom in it. And so at that point, he's ready to hear the teaching. I think the same is true for us today. If we're grabbing onto a view, we're not ready for the teaching.
So, so the Buddha has a psychic powers, and he probably could see that Dīghanakha was ready to hear this, because then there's a shift. I think, yeah, Dīghanakha his mind was just kind of opened up then, because, oh, I'm clinging to a view, the Buddha's pointing this out. And then so he starts teaching. Ajivasena sana, excuse me. This body is made up of four principal states. That's the four great elements. Produced by mother and father, built up of rice and porridge, liable to impermanence, to wearing away, to erosion, to breaking up, to destruction. You should see it as impermanent, as suffering, as distress, as diseased, as a boil, as a dart, as misery, as affliction, as alien, as falling apart, as empty, and not self. So this is three characteristics, and he's speaking of the body in terms of these three characteristics. It's made up of the four great elements of earth, water, fire, and air. That's the four principal states here. How does Bhante?
He does say four great elements.
Four great elements. And then just the physical form here, given birth and nurtured on food is liable to impermanence. So that's the first of the three characteristics. Anicca, wearing away, erosion, breaking up. This is all anicca, also dukkha. You should see it as impermanent. Yeah, this very long word here. I'll give you a question mark, but here's anicca. And then dukkha is here. That's the second. Is often translated as suffering. You should see it as impermanent suffering, as diseased, a boil, a dart. That's more kind of emphasizing the pain of the body, as misery, as affliction, as alien. Alien is starting to talk about non-self, falling apart. Empty is non-self and not self. So we have the three characteristics. In terms of the body, anatta. So he prepares the mind with the idea of this body being impermanent, suffering, and not self. Doing so, you'll give up desire, affection, and subservience to the body. And there's some note about it that I didn't quite think. Just the idea that how much we have to care for our bodies. We have to bathe it, we have to feed it, we have to, whenever the body, there's a call of nature, we have to answer it. We have to go to the bathroom. You know, we spend so much time bathing, dressing, finding shelter. So this is a subservience to the body. I think subservience to the body. That's that word. Kaya Kayanwayata. So then we give up this clinging to the body. It doesn't mean that we don't care for the body, but there's this attachment, and we know it's impermanent, and it's just the nature for the body to age, the nature for the body to get ill and eventually die. So there's all this obsession with trying to prevent all those things, which is impossible. And then he starts talking about Vedana. Here's Vedana. There are these three feelings. And feeling is sensation, sensations in the body. Sukha Vedana, this is a feeling of ease or happiness, comfortable. And dukkha is a discomfort in the body, unpleasant feeling. And a dukkham, asukham is translated as neutral here, or neither unpleasant nor pleasant. Vedana. At a time when you feel a pleasant feeling, you don't feel a painful or neutral feeling. So I think when there's a feeling in the body, then that it's often, you might think you feel a lot of different feelings at once, but often really strong, pleasant or unpleasant feelings, you kind of, all your awareness goes there. And then if you think about it, just your mind going from one thing to a next thing to a next thing very quickly, then what the mind is aware of at one point. I think this is what it's addressing here, because I could argue, oh no, I feel several feelings at once, but my knee is bothering me, so my attention goes there quickly, and then it goes somewhere else, and it goes back there again. Maybe it just keeps going back there and going back there, because that's what's grabbing my attention. And then if you're reading a book and you're absorbed in the book and the book is very pleasant and or enthralling, you forget about the pain in your back until you stand up, or your knee until you stand up, and then it's like, ah. I think we've all experienced that. So when you only feel a pleasant feeling, okay, and at the time when you feel a painful feeling, you don't feel a pleasant or neutral feeling. You only feel a painful feeling. At the time when you feel a neutral feeling, you don't feel a pleasant or painful feeling. You only feel a neutral feeling. Pleasant, painful, and neutral feelings are impermanent, conditioned, dependently originated, liable to end, vanish, fade away, and cease. Seeing this, a learned, noble disciple grows disillusioned with pleasant, painful, and neutral feelings. Being disillusioned, desire fades away. When desire fades away, they're freed. When they're freed, they know they're freed. They understand rebirth is ended. The spiritual journey has been completed. What had to be done has been done. There is nothing further for this place. That means this state of being, and this is kind of an awkward translation to me, that they know this is the knowledge, pajanati, this present state of existence. And I think that's what he was. He said, place.
Right.
Naparam, state,
Yeah.
ititataya, present state of existence, earthly existence. Naparang. And they've done what they had to be done, and there's no further rebirth, is what they're saying. When they fully understand, deeply understand this. A mendicant whose mind is freed like this doesn't side with anyone or dispute with anyone. They use the language of the world to communicate without getting stuck in it. Oh, excuse me, I was going to ask you to read how that rebirth has ended, spiritual journey has been.
Okay, just that part starting with birth is destroyed.
Okay, how about starting with being disillusioned, desires?
Okay. A noble disciple becomes disenchanted with the feeling, disenchanted, yeah, with pleasant, painful, neutral. Being disenchanted, they become dispassionate. Through dispassion, the mind is liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge. It is liberated. They understand birth is destroyed. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So this is a viraga is fading away of desire, dispassion, detachment. So he's translated it as dispassion, or maybe it's
disenchanted, dispassionate.
Okay, so
dispassionate, yeah.
Disenchanted is nibbida.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to being disillusioned or disenchanted. I like disenchanted, yeah, because
me too.
We were kind of enchanted sometimes that we think that this body is we want this body to be permanent. And if we had billions of dollars, we spend all this money trying to make it stay beautiful as long as you can, healthy as long as you can. making it as comfortable as you can. But it's all kind of the body and this existence has its problems. So to look at it realistically, to not being enchanted by it or just seeking what the world can't give us. And then the viraga is fading away or dispassion. And then vimucchati is released. Liberated. So we try to trick ourselves to think that there is happiness in the sensory world, but then we see through that. It's not that we can't it's not that we can't enjoy having a nice meal or something like that, but that is our source of happiness. That's our way to contentment and happiness, because it's endless. The desires are endless. So and then also the thing is too, which is interesting, is that when he talks about Vedana, I'm thinking about there's this thing about agreeable and disagreeable or pleasant, as Ajahn Thanissaro has translated, everything is pleasing to me or nothing is pleasing to me. That has to do with Vedana, and that would be at the mind. So the agreeable is really tainted with, or disagreeable is tainted with desire or aversion. So just seeing the impermanence of the body and the unsatisfactoriness of the body and feeling, then there's a big event that happens when the Buddha says a mendicant whose mind is freed like this doesn't side with anyone or dispute with anyone. They use the language of the world to communicate without getting stuck in it, on it. And then Bhante Bodhi says,
I was looking at another a referred sutta, so now I'm attempting to find my way back to our sutta, so sorry. Here we are. This one.
so
one whose mind is liberated, thus agavesana sides with none and disputes with none. They employ the speech currently used in the world without adhering to it.
that's it. Yeah. So it's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And so
and I highlighted it because it's so nice.
Yeah. So and it stops being a view, like a theory or a doctrine. And there's just this deep understanding of reality and understanding things in accordance with reality rather than some kind of a view or doctrine. But then that person doesn't need to argue with anybody.
Yeah, which the Buddha says in other suttas, I argue with no one in the world.
The world may argue with me, but I argue with no one in the world, or something like that. Yeah. What is it? Does it have it there?
Not that particular part, but what it says is that the Buddha's view is that these are merely names, expressions, turns of speech, designations in common use in the world, which the Tathagata uses without misapprehending them. So not grasping and taking it up. It's just to communicate wisely.
Yeah. So I think the problem is with the intellect and language, we end up, I try to communicate as well as I can, but people often misunderstand what I mean. And then language is also limiting. And then there's the conventions of, like, the Arahant may still refer to themselves
As me.
Or they may use their name or something, and that seems like an identity, but they know that it's all transient. It's nothing to cling to. So at that time, Venerable Sariputta was standing behind the Buddha, fanning him. Then he thought, it seems the Buddha speaks of giving up and letting go of all these things through direct knowledge. Reflecting like this, Venerable Sariputta's mind was freed from the defilements by not grasping. So the Sariputta had already been a very strong meditator and had already entered the stream. So he was just ripe for this conversation. And so it seems like, like he made a quantum leap at this point, but it was like all these different factors coming together, lifetimes of searching, that he was able to attain arhatship by listening to this conversation. I also think about him just standing there silently and fanning the Buddha, doing this repetitive motion of fanning the Buddha and listening intently to what the Buddha said. He probably got into some kind of meditative state as he was doing this. And then he realized arhatship. So reflecting like this, Sariputta's mind was freed from the defilements by not grasping, and the stainless, immaculate vision of Dhamma arose in the wanderer Dīghanakha. Everything that has a beginning has an end. Everything that has a nature to arise, all of that has the nature to end. All that has a beginning has an end. How does Bhikkhu Bodhi trans?
All that is subject to arising is subject to cessation.
Mm-hmm. Then Dīghanakha saw, attained, and understood and fathomed the Dhamma. He went beyond doubt, got rid of indecision, and became self-assured and independent of others regarding the teacher's instructions. So he entered the stream, hearing this teaching. Excellent, excellent, Master Gotama, excellent. As if he were writing the overturned, or revealing the hidden, or pointing out the path, or to the lost, or lighting a lamp in the dark to people who with clear eyes that can see what's there. Master Gotama has made the teaching clear in many ways. And it says that he went to refuge to the Buddha. I go for refuge to Master Gotama, to the teaching, and to the mendicant Sangha. From this day forth, may Master Gotama remember me as a lay follower who has gone forth for refuge for life. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So this is about the end of the hour. I don't know if anyone had a brief question about this.
Thank you, Aya. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, just one comment about his name, Dīghanakha. So it's a very interesting name. This Digha means large and Naka means nails. So large nails.
Yeah.
That's
So
very,
yeah, that may have been that he was a kind of a matted hair ascetic who didn't care for his hygiene. So so some neglected, trimming their nails, and they just let their hair get matted, and they wouldn't bathe and things like that. So there were some like that. So that maybe that was the theory for his name, why he was called that, Dīghanakha. But thank you for pointing that out. That's yeah, it is kind of funny. And then someone commented, it may have been Ajahn Brahm, or it may have been in the side notes for Bhante Sujato, that it seems unlikely that a wanderer would just only go take refuge, that they wouldn't go forth under the Buddha after entering the stream.
Interesting.
Yeah. So and then there was some idea of who Dīghanakha, which one of the disciples he became. But that's just kind of a side, an aside. It's not essential to this. What the teaching here basically is talking about is letting go of views, not being attached to views. And then what we should really be developing is the wisdom and really examining the Buddha's teaching. We start looking at the body and we can say, yes, it is impermanent. Yes, the body is unsatisfactory. And then try to understand the non-self nature of the body. That's the hardest one. The other two are pretty obvious. And weight in a two. These two are probably the most accessible, the feelings being, as soon as you eat your ice cream, you finish your ice cream and then it's done. It's like the pleasure you had is gone. And then there's a pain in your foot and you want it to go away, but but they do everything to try to make it go away. But you'll notice it changes too. The everything is in flux. So yes, but Wanda, now you have a comment or question?
Yeah. So I have read this sutta before, so I was familiar with it. I was just wondering, just asking for a practical question, some kind of a response from you, because as we all are aging, and I just wanted to check with the teachers that if any pain arises, sometime because it's not a momentary pain, it's just because we are aging, so it might occur in your body on a longer period of time and regularly. So do we need to take care of it? Of course, not mentally becoming agitated or anything like that, because sometimes you can be, but you are aware of your agitation because of the pain is there. You are agitated and you know it, and you keep doing it until you're not going to get rid of the pain because now you're old.
Okay.
Become
Let
part
me
of
answer
it.
that. Yeah, let me answer that. There are a lot of people that have chronic pain, and we do, it is not a bad thing to do everything you can to care for it. What is the cause of the pain? You don't want to continue injuring yourself. Like some people if they're meditating, they'll ignore, and the pain is starting to get really extreme and they end up injuring themselves. I've known people to do that, and that's not wise. But to do, just with aging, the body's impermanent. There's a thing about caring the best you can, but there's also being aware of the second arrow. I think you may know that.
Yeah.
The first arrow is the actual physical pain, and the second arrow is all that anguish of not wanting it, wanting to push it away. So that aggravates it more.
Yeah.
So do everything you can to care for yourself. I take supplements to help because my joints are breaking down, and the doctor recommends certain supplements, so they help. So I'm doing something, but I still have pain.
Yeah, same, because I had last Saturday after Katina.
Let me just close the Zoom now because we're getting to personal.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes.
The YouTube, and let's close, and then we can get into some more personal conversation.
Yes, so we're just ending the live stream part.
Okay, we're gonna end the live stream, so let's just pay homage to the Buddha, and then we can get into if you want to mention some things like that. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sangham Namami.